Welcome to Lunch Hour Legal Marketing. I am Conrad from Mockingbird, and I have broken my front left tooth 5 times.
Okay, how have you broken your front left tooth 5 times?
Once you break it once, it's like it's weaker forever.
I see. Well, I'm Guy Sokolakis from Attorney Sync, and I love oatmeal.
For those of you who are loyal listeners, you'll note that Guy really, I promise you, there's more to Guy than his love of roasted beets, oatmeal, but he keeps bringing up food. So
it's Lunch Hour Legal Marketing.
Okay. All right.
What else do we
Fair
talk
enough.
about besides my lunch?
Well, as the name of the title suggests, this is Lunch Hour Legal Marketing, the podcast where Guy and I go back and forth talking about the latest and greatest in legal marketing. And we're really, really excited. I'd like to note for everyone that we're looking at the back to school season. Guy, are your kids ready to go back to school?
Well, my wife and I are ready for them to go back to school. I think that they're, some days they wake up, they want to go back to school. Some days they don't. But we are so excited for back to school season.
All right. And this is a great time, lawyers. I promise this will be tactical right off the bat. This is a great time to give back to the community. Lots of people are doing backpack drives. Lots of people are helping teachers. Teachers, I'll just make this political statement. Teachers should not be using their own underpaid money to buy school supplies. Enter law firms. What is our keynote for the Lunch Hour Legal Marketing Summit, Cassidy Lewis, doing?
Yes, we have got to give a plug to our friend Cassidy Lewis at Cooper Hurley Injury Lawyers. If you want inspiration for campaigns to run, especially during back to school, go check out what they're doing. You can go to their website, but I think it's even more exemplative to go look at their Facebook page. They've got a vote for schools. They raise money for local schools, and they do user-generated content and votes for people that are local residents for the schools. They're doing, to Conrad's point, a back-to-school teacher Amazon wish list giveaway. I mean, this is the stuff that really ingratiates yourself to your local community, doing well by doing good. Great stuff. Applaud them. And I think from a tactical standpoint, folks check this out. And if you want to learn more about stuff like this, how to pull this stuff off, come to Lunch Hour Legal Marketing Summit, because you can meet Cassidy and ask her your specific questions about how you can do it at your firm. And
by Facebook, you spell that LinkedIn.com.
Well, correct? You can link. There's a post on. She did a post on LinkedIn about it, but then I went to the Facebook page, and the Facebook page is much more demonstrative of what the campaigns look like. But if you're not connected with Cassidy on LinkedIn, you should go connect there too. She's active there and is really some really good stuff, for lack of a more descriptive way of saying it.
Really good stuff.
Really good stuff.
All right. Along with really good stuff, we're going to be sending you more really good stuff. We're going to start off with the news. We've got a packed, juicy news segment today. We're then going to be sharing pearls of wisdom, previewing what's going to happen from the speakers at Lunch Hour Legal Marketing Summit. So we're just going to tactically drop 5 brilliant little ideas. And then after that, we're going to talk about, again, the rebranding disasters that law firms make.
Let's go.
Welcome to Lunch Hour Legal Marketing, teaching you how to promote, market, and make fat stacks for your legal practice. Here on Legal Talk Network.
And we're back. And if you can't tell, I am fired up for Lunch Hour Legal Marketing Summit. And today, we are going to drop some tactical pearls. We know not everybody can make it. And so, we know that there's still listeners out there that can't make it. So we wanted to share some of the love. And so we're going to drop a bunch of tactical pearls from some of the Ignite clips that are going to be presented at the summit, but we think that listeners would benefit from these and get something out of them. And so I'll shut up and let's roll them.
Elise Bowie from Elise Bowie Family Law. She is someone who I heard speak regularly about the importance of culture, not just speaking publicly about it, but actually really, really living it. So I was very surprised to hear her answer to this question. So, managing marketing as a business owner, what is one of the most surprising things that you have seen that's working?
I love that you asked what's working.
Right.
Is data, digging into data, knowing your numbers, like not letting your gut rule the day on anything and really looking at the numbers, because I'm just such a numbers person. And sometimes my marketing person will be like, oh, well, this is working. And I'm like, really? It's actually working. And when we dig into the numbers, the real story comes out. And so I just find it easier to run it with good data.
How much of your mindset has to be either cynical or analytical, depending on how you want to cut that, about the data that you're receiving from vendors, right? In order to get to the business metrics that really are important to you?
I mean, I think it has to be highly cynical and analytical, because I have definitely had vendors that give me numbers. And I mean, if you are a little bit of a student of statistics, I mean, you can play with numbers. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, they can give me numbers that look great, but when I dig in and really, look at them, it's like, okay, these are a bunch of vanity metrics that have nothing to do with anything, and I don't care. But I think that, and obviously I don't mean to knock on marketing vendors, but I think many of them know that they are dealing with busy professionals who didn't really like math. Like, statistics wasn't their thing, and they aren't going to dig in. And I think a lot of lawyers buy into the vanity metrics.
David Mihm is one of the leading minds on Google local results and has been from the very, very beginning. I met David a really, really long time ago. He passed off the local survey rankings factor to Darren Shaw, and now works for a company called Near Media. Near Media has partnered exclusively with Attorney Sync and Mockingbird to provide really, really in-depth research into how people choose a lawyer, specifically, in this case, personal injury law. So listen from David. What is the one thing that firms consistently get wrong when it comes to their marketing?
Yeah, so I'll give you, it's a bit of a nuanced answer, but I see very few firms doing this well and doing this the right way. And that is understanding how Google interprets a particular practice area or a particular case type. And the reason that that's so important is if you look at the results, if you do a search, anybody can do this. You don't have to be a marketer to do this, a managing partner, a person just getting started in local search. Go to Google, type the keyword that you're most interested in, type a handful of related keywords. So if I say car accident lawyer or, auto accident attorney, or those are all kind of in the same bucket of terms. What are the page types that Google is returning? Are they returning pages that are targeting a state, a metro area, the specific city that you're searching in? Who's ranking with what kind of content for that particular phrase? And that should tell you how you need to structure your website for that particular practice area. And way too often I see firms saying, oh, well, I don't want to create, I have 12 different offices across a given metro area. I don't want to create 12 different auto accident pages. Won't that be duplicate content? And the answer is maybe, right? You have to look at the kinds of results Google is returning. If they're showing a different page in Hillsborough, suburb of Portland near where I live, versus Gresham versus Lake Oswego, then guess what? You actually need to tell Google, hey, we do auto accident law in all three of those markets. And it's not enough just to mention, oh, we do auto accident law on your 3 location pages. Generally, Google is looking for deeper content specific to a specific geographic area.
Eric Pelton is a trademark attorney out of Falls Church, Virginia, and he talks about the tension that often exists between marketing names and the importance of trademark names. Have a listen.
It's going to be hard for a law firm to stand out if they don't use a name that is either unique or suggestive or provocative. If you use something really generic as your name, marketers might love it if you call yourself Texas Injury Law.
Right.
But we know every injury law firm in Texas is going to use that phrase for search engine purposes throughout their website everywhere. So it's going to be really hard to stand out, and it's going to be really hard for people to remember who to call. There's that law firm, they don't have a name, right, that really resonates that you're going to look for specifically. Okay. A trademark lawyer friend of mine, Joey, his law firm is called Indie Law, INDIE. Like, that's unique. It stands out. There's not going to be another one.
Okay. What's the one thing a lawyer should be doing from a trademark protection perspective? Like, what's the obvious first step?
Obvious thing to protect your brand is to file to register your core creative branding elements with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. The cost is not extreme. It's a great return on investment.
Okay, Casey Byris put in over 7 years as Director of Marketing at Dulutri Law Group and now is the COO and Marketing Strategist at her own firm, Byris Signature Touch.
I think the best and worst channel that you could possibly go on is actually social media. I think that as using it as far as grassroots marketing and really leaning into, your local community, especially using things like Facebook groups. There's tons of mom groups. There's tons of local business groups. Things like that is really, really powerful. But if you're trying to just go viral, anybody can go viral if you're just offensive enough. But that doesn't really bring in business either, because in Southwest Florida, we're not hiring the viral law firm out of New York City. So it's the worst and best network you could go for.
So how should a law firm look at evaluating which social media channels they should be involved in and which they should, avoid?
So if you're using a platform where you can pre-schedule posts, I would say just do all of them. You don't have to reinvent the wheel necessarily, but don't expect to blow up on Instagram or blow up on TikTok. They have a very specific following. So if you're not catering to those things, you're not going to see a huge return. However, if you're already posting on one platform, just post on all of them. It's not that difficult to just add one more thing. But if you really want to make an impact, the way you speak to Instagram, the way you speak to Facebook, and the way you speak to TikTok are very different.
So now that you've heard those nuggets from the Ignite Talks, I encourage you to head over to lunchhourlegalmarketing.com to sign up for the conference. Early bird pricing did expire on August 22nd, but you can still use code podcast today only, August 27th, to get $150 off, which is essentially early bird pricing. So if you already bought your early bird ticket, it's just going to take you back to your early bird price anyway. We're grateful for those early bird subscribers. For folks that have not bought their ticket yet, we're going to give you one last chance at early bird pricing today, August 27th.
And hey, Guy, I've actually done the numbers. There's only 50 tickets left. So I'm using that sales concept of scarcity. There are only 50 tickets remaining. We would love to have you, but we've only got so much room. So
I think there's actually less than 50 left.
Oh, dun, dun, dun. And Guy, we started the news segment with the AffiniPay rebranding to 8 a.m. They did this. I have concerns about this. This does not seem like a really great idea. So 8 a.m. means essentially nothing. It doesn't stand for anything, which actually there's value in standing for nothing. Avo did that very deliberately. There was a little nod to the Latin, but 8 a.m. stands for nothing. There's also no continuity in this. It's not an extension. It's not an evolution. It is a complete rebrand. I remember the Coke and New Coke disaster because I'm over 40 years old, and that was problematic. It seems oftentimes that when people rebrand, there's a lot of excitement around this, but the real end result is confusion. I know you're speaking at the AffiniPay conference, so I don't want to put you on the spot to badmouth them, but where's the upside here, dude?
So I'm going to take the other side of this. Look, I think there is a point to be made about continuity. and this platform unification. I think one of the challenges, for folks that aren't familiar, AffiniPay has a bunch of different logos in their portfolio. My case, and the top of the company, just AffiniPay in general, it speaks to payments. And so I do think that an idea of trying to come up with a unified, and we'll give a link to folks at LawNext, Bob Ambrosi makes this point too, is this idea of unified corporate identity. And so, having a unified corporate identity under payments only, that seems rather restrictive. And they're marketing a new beginning. So, and I won't put words in your mouth, and I'll let you respond to that. And the reason I'm reflecting here is because in our previous episode on talking about this, your whole point is that the brand, knowing the brand is the whole value of it. And when you change that, you're basically hitting the reset button. It's like Memento. Now you got to start back over. At least that's the way that I was interpreting what you were saying. But I don't know. I think my big thing about it, and again, it's also created buzz and PR. And as you mentioned, I'll be speaking at Kaleidoscope in Austin, and I encourage folks to get down there. I think they're going to do a great conference. For me, does it make sense to do this 2 weeks before the conference? I mean, there's arguments both ways. And as we were preparing for the show, and even in my own trying to promote the conference, 2 weeks before the show, I'm going to search for the new brand, and I see there's 48 other 8 a.m.s on LinkedIn, and so to me that was the biggest drawback. And again, it's easy to be Monday morning quarterback on this stuff, but you certainly don't want to make it harder for folks to find you, right?
So I want to bring this to law firms, right? And we're using this as an example as if it's a law firm. It's not a law firm. We talked about there are multiple brands under AffiniPay. I don't see that as any different from having multiple lawyers underneath a law firm or even doing multiple practice areas. But why start over? I don't, for the life of me, understand why you would start over. Now, there's a problem in the initial naming. AffiniPay clearly means transactions, right? So again, to tie this to law firms, if you are, and I will use this example because it's been so clear in the Seattle market, if you're Bradley Johnson, who has spent millions of dollars in the Seattle market branding 1-800-DUI away, that is the brand that people know, and you then want to staple personal injury on top of it like he did, it doesn't work. Right?
See, that's what I think this is. I think that's a great analogy. I think that's what this is, right? They're switching from, they're like, we still do DUI, but we're bigger than DUI now. How do we have a brand that just speaks to DUI?
Well, I get, so like, I'll use the internet brands. I will say something nice about internet brands.
First, lunch hour legal marketing first.
Breaking news. No, so like most of you don't know who I'm talking about because Internet Brands is an umbrella company over a bunch of different brands that have stayed consistent from the beginning. Avo is a part of that. There's a whole bunch of other brands that have existed. What they didn't do is they didn't take one of those brands and try and turn it into something else. They maintained the value of the brand. And Internet Brands, for better or worse, is about sucking the value out of these existing brands. And they know that by rebranding anything, they cut a large amount of that value.
So again, I love that you use this example.
Yeah.
So what did they do? Martindale-Avo.
Yeah.
Good branding exercise there.
But here's the difference. It's not called Coffee Cup, right? Like there's still an understanding of what Martindale is, and if you turn Martindale Avo or Martindale or Avo into Coffee Cup, people are like, what the hell is this thing, right?
Right, and so again, just to give the counterpoint again, and I don't love this part of this whole exercise here, but they are doing the sub logos are still going to exist, but there's going to be 8 a.m. LawPay, 8 a.m. My Case, and so forth. But I hear you. I think I don't know. I don't feel as the issue that you raise about in the context of the law firm, which I guess again, this is a show for law firms. It does make a lot of sense because the consistency and your message alignment, like that's important. Like you can't be, I mean, we talk about this even with like in the context of like Google business profiles. You can't be, Detroit injury accident lawyers and then be categorized as another practice area. It just creates so many issues. It has to be a consistent all the way from the name of the firm to what you do to who you serve. There's got to be consistency there, I think. And so
I agree. Yeah.
And so, I think this is the exercise. And I know you've got a brand refresh coming up. And so maybe we dovetail into talking about refreshes versus rebrands. But there's trade-offs there. And I think that you're just recognizing there's a huge trade-off to coming up with a new brand. I think when you balance those things, sometimes the arguments for actually outweigh the arguments again. But I do think it's important for listeners, if you're thinking about a rebrand or if you're thinking about a merger or thinking about it being acquired, that you're really thoughtful about how you go forward with this stuff, because it does make a huge difference. And it's not as simple as like, oh, we're just going to come up with a new name. There's a cost to that in terms of, especially if you've invested in brand historically, you're basically tearing that entire real estate down.
Yeah, which in my opinion is almost always a miss. We have we're recording this on August 20th. By August 21st, my long-awaited new website will be up. And boy, oh boy, has this been a, cobbler's kids have no shoes kind of thing. Our website has been outdated for at least 4 years.
Well, let's talk about your brand refresh journey. So when you started thinking about doing this,
yeah,
what were the whys? Like, what were you thinking? Was it the cobbler? You're like, our website needs to be improved because it's not reflective of what we want it to be today. Like, what were the reasons to even start having the conversation?
It's a great question. I think there are two elements to this. So the positioning was solid, and the positioning is like most agencies lie to you. We are no bullshit. These are the things that we do and how we do them and why we think about them. That's content that had been evolving over time. But very bluntly, the visuals were dated, man. Like, it looks dated. It looks old. And I can't remember when this existing version of the site was first done, but it's at least 7 years ago, right? And it just felt dusty and old. It was like, it just felt old. And that does not give, like, lawyers sell a service. And people look at different cues as to whether or not you give a good service, whether you do a good job with your service. And none of that has anything to do with the practice of law. And your website is one of those cues that the people use to determine whether or not you deliver great legal work, right? Which is dumb because they're not correlated at all. As all of you have complained to me who say that, like, I'm the best lawyer in town, but why doesn't Google rank me better? So you get this. And so we were not pushing a forward-leaning, sophisticated image. And our clients are forward-leaning, sophisticated clients. And so it was dissonant.
Got it. So, and again, you use the term refresh versus rebrand, and it's certainly not a rebrand. You're still operating under Mockingbird. Are you changing positioning, or is positioning remaining the same?
Positioning remains the same. And I think so I'm going to bring this back to lawyers. Position needs to be something that's consistent. Values need to be something that's consistent. Messaging needs to be something consistent. And this is why I think changing a brand, even if we're talking about, should we go from Murphy and Smith to Murphy, Smith and Jones, right? Like, that is problematic because by definition, it injects instability and lack of consistency in your world, which you just cannot live with. And so for us, positioning stays the same, messaging stays the same. We needed a new visual. And by the way, you guys too, like many law firms, if your site's 5 years old, it probably looks like it, right? And that does not. So are you losing some conversions because of that? Yeah, you might be. You might be.
Well,
right.
And I think the other thing that's on in addition to just the freshness and the visuals part of it, and again, give a plug to this intermedia stuff because this stuff comes up in it, like what matters to legal services consumers. I think oftentimes what happens is a couple different examples. The first one is the kitchen sink example. The firm tries to do everything on the homepage. It's like every award and recognition, every attorney bio, every client testimonial. Like it's just, they're trying to do too much. And so it's lost by that. And I think that that's part of this conversation about branding and websites and messaging and positioning. You can't do it all. It's overwhelming. And two is that it's really, when you talk about web pages, it's what are you going to prioritize? Because you got that top of the fold, you got that masthead. There's only, and I don't know where you are on the sliding banners these days, but I'm not big on those. And so you have limited real estate and you have to prioritize. And so I think some of the stuff that comes out of the near media research is talking about like, what are the things law firms should be prioritizing? Top of the page, first thing, primary calls to action. There are certain triggering keywords that matter a lot, especially in the PI lawyer context. And so sometimes those things just get lost because we haven't thought of them in a while. We haven't updated our website in a while. We weren't really thinking like this. Like our firm's actually evolved from a business standpoint. Like we didn't have mission, vision, values, positioning, and we've never really deployed that new way of thinking to our website.
And at the risk of sounding like we're plugging near media too much, I'm going to plug near media a little bit further. Talk to me and Guy if you would like access to these studies. Most of the time, when you are engaged in redesigning a website, and we've done probably, I don't know, in the hundreds,
more than you want to,
more than I care to count. It's driven by gut, and
right.
It's often driven by the gut
ego
of whoever has the biggest voice in the room. And you're wrong. Like, I hate to tell you, you're wrong. And the research will tell you how you are wrong. So I think it's really important as we think about these things to make sure that as you're doing redesigns and refreshes and I'm not going to say rebrand. I think you need to think really carefully about a situation in which you would proactively want to rebrand. But if you're working on a refresh, using research to make sure that you are designing this for the things that people actually care about, that are going to turn them into clients, super, super key. Otherwise, you guys, you're just guessing. And it is a creative process driven by research.
I think the other thing that I think about in this context, and we might have talked about this in the last one, but it's a heavy lift because it's not just your website. You have got to go find every single place that if you're using a new logo, if you're using new imagery, if you're using new whatever, and you got to go update it. You got to update all your social media profiles. You got to update all your email signatures. You got to update all sorts of, if you're using offline collateral, and I hope you didn't do your brand refresh in the middle of a print newsletter that you're sending out because you just wasted a bunch of money. But I think it's a second point on your point about the permanency of the brand and that you've already established this brand. The consistency is so important. I mean, it creates confusion. If you see, like, I even think this is how mindless I'm using the internet. If someone changes their LinkedIn profile picture, even just the color of the background, all of a sudden I don't recognize them for a split second. And so it's so important, and to Conrad's point, is that you're considering all these things. I even think about my own experience. Jeff and I have talked about rebranding Attorney Sync many times. A lot of folks don't know this, but when Attorney Sync started, it was much more lead generation. Like, we weren't a digital marketing agency in the way that we are today. And we you should have heard the conversations about our branding exercises. I mean, we were almost Blue Cheetah was one of the examples that remarkable that it comes to mind from 2007. And, it's silly now when you think about it, but I come back to, and I use the same point that you make, which is Attorney Sync, there's brand search traffic for better or worse, even though Attorney Sync may have zero meaning, anything to do with marketing. I mean, it's got attorney in the word, I suppose. What's the point? Why would we make the switch unless there? And I think now that I've framed, it's really you have to have some very, very compelling reasons to make the switch. And what those compelling reasons are, I think we've covered some of those, but it's really got to be like, we have to do this, not like I feel like doing this or I don't really like our brand. It's got to be something really compelling to go through this process.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, spending a little time. Just a reminder, if you are getting to the end, if you listen all the way through the podcast, you have till the end of today, if you're listening to it on the day that it came out, the 27th, to join us with the early bird pricing at lunchearlegalmarketing.com. Use the code podcast. Hope to see you there. If you have any questions, we would love to address them on our next episode. Say goodbye to your kids. Don't cry when you drop Junior off at college, because it's where he needs to be.
Money makes a it makes a world go round. Money makes a world go round. Yeah, money make a world go round. Money makes a world go round. Yeah, money make a world go round.